Hello and welcome. Hello and welcome.
My name is Mark Tyoxin. And this is the Waldorf School of Atlanta podcast.
This is the Waldorf School of Atlanta podcast. With me today is Ayana. Thanks for hanging out with me.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So diving right into it, right to the beginning, how and when did you first hear about Waldorf education?
We went to a Waldorf-inspired preschool. So, can I talk about this, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely.
Preschool? Okay, cool. Okay, so actually I was looking for a co-op and a co-op preschool, and I found Children's Garden, which is a Waldorf-inspired preschool. And I went to visit, just to like check them out, and I saw the children outside playing and the teacher getting them to come back inside, and she was singing to them, like singing.
Right.
And then there's this one little girl
Like instead of talking, singing. Not just singing a song, but instead of talking, singing.
Exactly. And instead of yelling, right? Like, come on, everybody. It wasn't like that. It was like this, and I would try to do it, but my voice is not great. But just imagine like a beautiful sing-songy voice calling the kids to her. And also one little girl was having a little meltdown, like as toddlers do sometimes. And the way that she dealt with her, the teacher, it was Miss Sally. Yeah. Miss Sally just stood there, very calm, very like present, and like addressed her like she was a human, you know what I mean? And not like just some little kid like, get on over here,
Right.
It was and right then I was like, oh, this is it. I didn't even tour the school yet. I was just like, these are where my kids are gonna go. So Zeke, my oldest, who's 12 now, he'll be 13 next week, started there when he was 2.5.
Were you just looking for, you were looking for a preschool, and then did you know what Waldorf education was sort of about before you went there?
I had no idea. I hadn't even heard of it.
Okay.
And so we were at this, it just came on a Google search. So it was like, I don't know, serendipity. So we went to the preschool. We loved it, of course. And after preschool, you're like, okay, where do you go next? And throughout the program, you know that this is Waldorf inspired, because it was not like technically Waldorf accredited.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna check out the Waldorf school. And when we went to visit, I was not making any money. I wasn't working, and we were like, it's financially.
When you went to visit Waldorf School of Atlanta specifically. Okay.
Right, we went there, and it was just like, it just felt like, I was like, I can't afford this place. And I visited and I fell in love, and I was like kind of sad that we wouldn't be able to go. But then I put my son in, after preschool, my daughter was still at Children's Garden, I put him in like a public charter school that had amazing reviews, awesome test scores, like everything, just checked every box, really small class sizes. And it was awful. It was god awful. And he went there. It was, I just hated it so much. I was like, all right, we gotta make it work at Waldorf. So we did. We made it work. It was a struggle. It was a really big struggle. But I got a job. I got like a real job, and so I could afford it. And I was happy. I was happy to sign those checks to go to Waldorf, because it was such a beautiful, amazing place to be. From the community to the way that my kids are respected and seen. Mostly my kids being seen was like the biggest thing.
How are they seen? How do you feel that they are seen? What's that experience?
So when we visited Waldorf, when Zeke visited, I talked to Mr. Morose's teacher, and after 1 or 2 days of visiting, she read my child. Like, so Zeke has been like super academic ever since he was like, he taught himself how to read when he was 2 years old, right? Mm-hmm. And so in public school, they're like, oh, he makes good grades. Like, good, check. Like, I'm done. I'm done with that. But then, sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Okay.
Go on.
But at Waldorf, it was like he struggled in other areas, like his sense, his body sense, his emotional sense, like just a bunch of other stuff. And she just like knew every single thing. It was like she knew him.
It's as if they live up to the whole development of the whole child.
Exactly.
And not just the grades and the rubrics on paper.
Exactly.
And so while he was good at the sort of academic stuff at that level, there was more to his development that they noticed at Waldorf versus the other school.
Exactly. Notice and help develop.
Yes.
Like they met him where he was. It's great.
And then you brought along, obviously, your second child.
Anaya, yep. So Anaya didn't even have the public school experience. After,
Obviously, after such a good first child experience there, why would you even
Why would I
it was
try it?
like, yes.
Right. We're like, we know where she's going to go. So she started Children's Garden, and then she went over to Waldorf, and it was just like amazing. Yeah.
What are some of your, I mean, I'm sure there are many, and I'm leading you here, but what are some of your favorite aspects or differences that you found in Waldorf education versus public school?
Okay, so for one thing, like I said, Zeke taught himself to read when he was 2 years old. But the way that he saw problems was very like kind of direct, you know. So when they gave him a reading test, they were like at the public school. When he was in public school, they gave him a reading test. So he read a story about going to the zoo, which he would go to the Grant Park Zoo all the time, right? And when he would go, he would always ride the train, right? And so he read the story about the zoo, and the teacher said, okay, what's the point? Like, what is your favorite thing about going to the zoo? Or why do people go to the zoo? Or something like that. She asked, like something about going to the zoo. And his answer was to ride the trains. Now, the story had nothing to do with trains. So her, like, she's like, oh, this kid doesn't get anything. Right. So I'm going to put him in this lower reading class because he doesn't understand what he's reading. So she put him in this lower reading class. He started not liking reading. And and then I had to go up there and had to talk to them and tell him, like, you know, Zeke, you know, like whatever. They eventually put him in the right reading class, but it was just like I had to do all of that so that they could see him. And it wasn't even like they saw him. It was like they saw what I was telling them. Right. You know what I mean?
I was like, oh no, the parent's here. Let's just make the parent happy.
Right, exactly. And one time I would visit because I wasn't working at the time, you know. And so I would like spend a bunch of time at the school.
Oh no, she's just got all the time.
I had all the time. And you know, it was a public school, and I was like, you know what? I should give my resources, since we're not paying for private school, you know, I should give my public resources to the public school.
Be involved.
They did not appreciate my involvement. So one time I visited, or I think I was maybe coming to bring Zeke something or lunch or whatever. But I just stood there and I noticed that these kids were saying the meanest stuff to each other. And the teachers, the adults were just like completely not paying attention. And I'm like, there's a situation here. Do you know what I mean? Right. Like these kids are not being treated. They're not treating each other with respect. And they just didn't even notice. The first day of school at the public school, I saw the assistant principal standing there with a class. Meanwhile, a mom of this class this is an older class. They're like in middle school or something, like 6th grade or something. The mom is just ripping her daughter a new one, just calling her out, just like yelling at her. It was just like really, I was embarrassed. I felt shamed, you know, like watching this whole interaction. And the assistant principal sitting there nodding her head like, you know, and I was like, how awful is that?
Right.
Contrast that with so when I first took Zeke to Waldorf, you know, we didn't really know how to parent, you know what I mean? Like he was our first kid, like we didn't really know what we were doing. We just did kind of what our parents did, but like a little bit better, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so we would like be physical, not hit him, but like, you know, grab his arm, you know, yell at him. And Zeke was so like out of control, like wild kind of. And there's a little kid there who was putting on his shoe, and Zeke took his own shoe, and smacked the little boy on the face right there in front of me. And I was like, Zeke, I like yelled, I'm like, Zeke, and I grabbed his arm. And his teacher, and it took me by surprise, and I was a little bit annoyed when she did this, but I chilled out. But she like put her hand like up or on me or something like that, like basically stopped me and was like, you know, like looked at me like, no. I don't even know if she said no. I don't remember because I was like in such shock. Right. But she said, and then she looked at Zeke and she's like, gentle hands. I was like, what? You think this is going to work? And how dare you tell me? But you know what? Zeke was like I said, he was kind of wild. And whenever we were going to playground, he would be like the main one. Like if there was a kid crying, Zeke would be involved. Like he was just like so wild. And yeah, he was just like that kid. And I was like, I must be doing something wrong. You know, like let me just do this Waldorf thing, you know, just try it out.
Yeah.
So they helped me with that. How to talk to him. Found out he was very sensory, you know, stuff. So grabbing him was actually the worst thing to do to him. Yelling at him, terrible. So we had to just like basically have this very calm presence when we were talking to him and when we were dealing with him so that he could like feel calm inside of himself. Another thing that they helped me with is his diet, you know what I mean? So like his lunches, I would just give him a bunch of carbs. Like I didn't know, I mean it wouldn't be like candy or anything, but I might give him just bread with like peanut butter and jelly or something. And
I laugh because I may be doing that currently. So not like, oh my gosh, Ayana, that's awful.
right. Oh
I'm
no.
thinking like the lunches I've been making. Oh, okay.
Right. Yeah. And so she, Sally helped me. She was like, yeah, he needs more protein, like not so much carbs and sugar, like, fresh fruit every single day, like something that's like that can rot, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like not something that can sit
Okay.
on every day. And, we did that and it was a major difference. Huge. Now, like after a couple years at Children's Garden, parents would compliment me like, Zeke, he is such a sweet kid. He's so calm. Like he's just a good, and I know it was because of like the lessons that I learned, yeah, but now he's in 7th grade and
Wow.
yeah, now he's in 7th grade and he's just like, we kept the no media, so actually not no media but low media, right? So when we were at Children's Garden, well, when he was like preschool age all the way up to like maybe 5th or 6th grade, like we were super super low media, and because of that they had to like develop their own like interests, you know what I mean? Like they had to like find things, like they would get bored, and so they
Fill
would
in that space.
fill in the space.
That's usually often taken with television or media.
Exactly. So he plays piano, he plays cello, he writes amazing stories. I mean, he's just like super well rounded, and he's able to like figure out what to do. Him and his sister just like they'll create stories together. It's just like a beautiful experience, and he can do that without like having to be entertained with the media.
Talk about the Waldorf sort of community. While there are there's community in other schools, I feel like, I only know as far as growing up and everything, but I feel like the community at Waldorf, like it's built in, and if you are open to participating, it is open to really receiving you.
Yes, for sure, 100%. There is something really special about the Waldorf community, and I'm going to take it back to Children's Garden because that's like where we started.
Right.
But when I started at Children's Garden, it changed like the way I saw myself. Like it was like I finally found my people. It's like the people that are attracted to the Waldorf education, paradigm are just people who, it seems to me, are like, they just really care. You know what I mean? And so when there's a problem between kids, like for example, Zeke had a problem in I don't know, I think it was like 2nd grade or 3rd grade or something, and I was so upset about what happened at school. It was like some kid stuff, like the kids didn't mean it, but it just like really hurt him. It really really hurted me. And so I called each parent of the kid involved, and they like empathize with me, and they talked to their kid, and we talked about it, and it was like fine, and it was over, and it was just like this beautiful like communication, you know what I mean? And yeah, I found my best friends are from Waldorf. The people that I hang out with, it's just like, I don't know, it's just like you find your people, there.
Describe, I don't know, let me think of a question.
Okay.
What is one of your favorite things that is the difference between the older grades that your son is in now, and then the younger grade that your daughter's in now?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. So when we first started at Waldorf, I guess the academics was like, it wasn't like super strenuous, you know what I mean? Like like I said, he had been academic for so long, and I know I'm not talking about an eye at all, am I?
Okay.
I should talk about okay. But I was like, I mean, I'm a math tutor, right? And I'm like, and so I know that anybody can learn anything at any moment, right? As long as you like are willing, you know what I mean? Like if you want to learn something, nothing can stop you. And so I wasn't super concerned about the academics of Waldorf. I did hear that, like once you left Waldorf, you might struggle, but when Zeke got into middle school, things really ramped up for him, like academic wise. And the math that he's doing is very complicated. It's really hard. And even Anaya's only in 4th grade, but we were doing some fraction problems that was like, it had me scratching my head. I'm a math tutor. I'm like, how do they, how is a 4th grader going to understand this? But we talked it through and she got it like this, you know what I mean? Like she just like it was like the way they teach them how to think about math. It's like more, it's holistic, you know. It's
Right. Well, math in general is, I mean, at different schools is definitely taught differently than it was when we were growing up, as far as just the straight arithmetic,
right,
which is basically when we were growing up, we were taught an algorithm.
right,
This is where you put the numbers to get the answer out, without a real deeper understanding of
right,
math itself. You know,
Right.
like how it actually works. We were just like,
Right.
you need to put the numbers in this format, and it turns out the answer.
exactly,
Right. Whereas now they teach them like, this is why the numbers work, why they're in that position even.
right,
You know, so then there's a lot more flexibility,
right,
and it can easily apply to the real world when you are not just doing the formula in your head.
exactly,
You know,
exactly,
so it's spatial and everything else.
exactly.
So, and I don't get it. No, I'm one of those parents who I'm catching up. You know, it's like Jonah will come home and he'd be like, "This is how we do," and they draw it out a lot differently than the algorithms that we were taught. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know those boxes. I don't know that spacing, how you're breaking it out. So, but I understand that like it helps further on down the line when you're not just on paper.
Right, right, exactly.
But yeah, so helping him is a little different, and you know, and then it's like checking in with the teacher, because obviously I could do the math the old way, but
Right,
it's not the way they are learning,
Right,
You know,
exactly,
so there's
right.
that space there.
right.
What do you think about having the teacher move up every grade with them, and that difference compared to almost every other school out there?
I mean, I really love it. I also really love my kids' teachers. I
Mhm.
think that if there was not a good match between my kids' teachers, I would definitely struggle. But
It is dependent on
your teacher, yeah,
feeling as though you have confidence in your teacher.
right.
Yes.
But also the Waldorf education model, it
Mhm.
asks the teachers to do a lot of internal work, like inner work. And so if there is an issue between a teacher and a kid,
Mhm.
the teachers do the inner work to like figure out what is it within me that is triggering, you know what I mean? Like that this
Causing
kid
this
is
conflict to a
exactly
degree, yeah.
right. And so that might be why I have such a good why the teachers are so amazing, because they're like constantly doing this inner work.
Well, I think that also temperament is very important in the
Yeah.
teacher selection,
Yeah.
right? Whereas
Right.
it's not just skills, not just have you passed the teacher exam.
Right.
Like in the interview process and just the overall teacher selection for a Waldorf education teacher,
Right.
it is a different type of thorough.
Right.
You know, like
Exactly.
can you manage yourself in the way that we sort of ask you to around
Exactly.
children and situations as well. So
Right.
yeah, one of the things that I tell people is with the whole teacher moving up with the classes is that it is a benefit, especially in that different from other schools, most other schools where you switch out teachers every year, children don't learn only within that year span, right? That time frame. So some of their learning overlaps. So year to year, whether like they catch up in the first quarter or the next year, the teacher isn't so worried about it because they can see the progress.
Right.
They can see as long as there is the progress,
Right.
you know, it's not limited to like, oh my gosh, they didn't finish by summertime. That means they're behind.
Right.
You know, they know that, and other factors like they know the parents and every other situation, and they're coming back. They know that we'll work on it over the summer a little bit, but we don't have to worry because sometimes children apparently develop at their own pace.
Right. Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
and they will get it. And same thing with the reading, which is a big deal when you first find out about the sort of the process of learning reading at Waldorf is different from other schools. Can you address or talk about that a bit?
Yeah, sure. So another comparison to public school, and it was a public charter, by the way, too. It wasn't just like
Right,
a
it wasn't
random
just-
public
yeah.
my neighborhood charter. Like it was like I got on the list, like and Zeke was there in first grade, and because he stayed at Children's Garden until he was in kindergarten. So in first grade, he was at this public school, and I looked at the kindergartners' work, and they were required to like read an essay and basically write their opinions about it. Now, in kindergarten,
Right.
you're like, what are you doing? I mean, I'm sure some kids can do it, right? Like some kids are fine with it, but it just seems so ridiculous to me. Anaya, on the other hand, she learned to read. So Zeke taught himself to read when he was like a toddler, and but Naya didn't learn to read until like maybe the summer between first and second grade, or something like that. And and nobody pressured her. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like this, oh, you have to sit down and like do your, like nobody did any of that. We waited until she was interested, and then we answered questions when she wanted, and then if she didn't want to do it, we just let it go. Now she's in 4th grade and she's reading basically the same books as my son. Like my son is reading like young adult novels, and I really want him to, I mean, I don't know if it's appropriate for him when he's 12 because they have, some juicy stuff in there. But, I can't make him read like the
Right.
middle school books because they're just too easy for him.
Rated is appropriate for his age.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Like his reading level is higher than what's appropriate. And the same for Naya. Like she can read the same level as him, like up there, but the material is just not appropriate. And so it's like, them waiting to read does not hinder them in any capacity, but forcing them to read definitely does. Like I know people who tried to teach their kids to read when they were like 2 and 5 years old, not 2, but maybe like more 4 and 5 years old, because that's like basically when the school system kind of wants you to start reading.
Very early,
and it's just
yeah.
super early, and then the kids don't get it, and then the parents are frustrated because they're like, I need you to be on level, and then it just causes this like inner like conflict within the kid, like I need to be doing this but I can't, and I feel really bad about it because my mom is mad at me for not doing it. And it's just like, can we just skip all that and just like let them read when they're ready? The thing is, every kid wants to read. Like that's just how it is. Like they want to read.
Right.
So just let them develop it. And that's it.
There is a pressure, because other schools and other parents, and where their children are learning a certain amount of reading and can kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, whereas at Waldorf it is a bit more delayed in that way, knowing that it's not going to be a problem, that they're going to catch up, and in fact, largely have better comprehension of what they're reading because of the way that they have been taught to read and also comprehend the topics and subject matter.
Exactly.
But it is definitely a struggle when you feel like, or it's just not the same schedule as other schools.
Right. It can feel like scary, like, am I putting my kid at a disadvantage? When really you're putting your kid at an advantage when you let them develop the love of learning within themselves and not like tamp it down with like our adult pressures, It's just inappropriate.
What do you think about the type of instruction there, actually, at the Waldorf School of Atlanta?
So I really like their instruction. It's very, we talked about the word holistic, So every year, right, like as kids develop, they have different things that's going on inside of them developmental wise, and the lessons are kind of geared toward that, and it just makes it like live more in the kids, So like, for example, in middle school, when the kids are like basically struggling with like kind of distancing themselves from their parents, and they're like kind of like, this is wrong and this is right, so they'll let them kind of study that duality, and then like, what does the duality mean, like right versus wrong, and then what if you like switch sides, like they explore more of that, as the kids and I'm not a Waldorf teacher. I'm not a Waldorf trained.
Right.
So I'm probably saying this all wrong. But I do know that the lessons live in the kids like much in a deeper way, like from what I've seen.
Well, yeah, no, even just, I've only got the one child, having gone from kindergarten, preschool, but kindergarten through currently 1st grade. And yeah, the lesson plans and the subject matter is, it's selected at the same development that the children are. Right. So whether they're going through adolescence and sort of the challenges of their own internal development, that their subject matter will tie into that to a degree.
Right.
So, and not just level of difficulty. It's also how it works and also what's going on in their mind and body. But yeah, and it is considered in a sort of more holistically whole child development versus just like, okay, you've gone up a grade, now the subject matter is going to be a little bit harder just in that one fashion. Right. Just that one metric. It's got more words, more deeper knowledge and stuff like that, Whereas as otherwise it's tied into like sort of like what is going on in your emotional development.
Right, exactly.
What do you wish that parents knew about Waldorf education when they first come to it, actually? Say you're like a new parent looking at schools and you come across this thing called Waldorf education where they seem to be very hippie.
Right.
A lot of singing, lots of wood, and,
Right.
and felt and knitting.
Right.
What is maybe one thing you wish you could tell them about it?
I would say just kind of be open, like and just like don't take for granted that what society tells us about our kids and technology and like getting them on this fast track to Harvard or whatever is don't believe it that is true, because it's really not. Like, no matter where your kids go to school or start or whatever, the most important thing is that they know their worth and they feel like humans and they feel seen and heard, and that way, and when they have that, they can do anything. They could go to Harvard, they could teach at Harvard, they could go anywhere with that.
That's excellent. Thank you so much for hanging out.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
That's the end.
Okay.
I don't really know how to end these, so that's the end. Thank you. That's excellent.
Okay, thanks.
Fancy.